Hello, I am Emma Cowling and I am here tonight to talk to you about negotiation skills, and in particular to talk about negotiation skills when you're going into a new role or when you're negotiating for a particular change of contract or change a pay rise or anything to do with the contractual and the benefits around being in a role. So that's the kind of the aim of this evening's masterclass. It's just to give you maybe some new perspective on this, maybe give you some background and encourage you to think about if you're in a role where you're wanting to change and you're wanting to negotiate something differently, then how might you approach that and what are the things that you might negotiate around? So that's the purpose of this evening's talk. So definitely welcome comments and any questions that you might have. If you do comment, then I can only see your name if you've clicked the little link that's in the opening to this, because I'm streaming on StreamYard. So StreamYard isn't able to see that information unless you give it permission. So if you'd like me to see your name, then click on that and it will give me your name as well. Otherwise it comes up as Facebook user. So thank you, Facebook user, who's just said, hey, I don't know who you are. In Facebook we can see it, but we can't see it here. But hello, it's great to have you here. And so that's what it comes out like, so that you can see. Let me remove that. So it also takes about 12 to 15 seconds for comments to come through. So if there's a delay in me seeing anything, it's either because of that or it's because I'm just not at the right point to kind of take questions. But what I'll do is I'll look every so often and I'll group questions together and I'll try and respond as best I can. So with that, having said that, welcome. And I'm going to talk about negotiation skills. So the first thing, it's Tony. Hi, Tony. Great to see you. I'm glad you could come on. So thanks for the comment and hello. So the first thing I wanted to do is really kind of when we're going into a negotiation, it's always good to be prepared with what is it that's our ideal? Where is it that you want to be going towards? What would you like to come out of the negotiation with? Now, I'm deliberately phrasing this as what is your ideal, because it's probably not what you're going to come out with. Because you don't know the other perspective, you don't know what you're negotiating and what you're up against. But having an ideal gives you a point to be able to start to work around and think about, well, how do things trade off against one another? And in particular, when we're talking about kind of going into a negotiation around job role, the challenges can often be that, well, it can often feel like there's lots of things to juggle. And one of the things that I thought would be useful just to step back and say actually is that what we're talking about is an exchange of your time and your skills for money. So that's really what we're exploring here in these negotiations. How much time, how great your skills are in some ways, how you apply your skills and the skills that you bring for money that your employer is paying you. And there are some other bits that I'm going to come back to and talk about, but really that's the trade-off that you're doing within this negotiation. And I'm deliberately simplifying it because it helps to kind of really step back and kind of think, right, okay, what's going on here? So the first thing that I thought that it would be useful to do is say, well, let's talk about money. Let's get that off the table, because money is often the thing that we don't like to talk about. Money is the thing that can just feel, I don't know, a bit challenging, because all of us have different thoughts, different beliefs, different ideas about money. And so we don't like to talk about it. There's this idea that what you're paid in your role can often be taken as being about the value that you bring personally and the value that you are. And really that's where I think a lot of the challenges come around money. The fact that they are about it starts to feel personal. And the thing that really I just wanted to flash up is to say, well, it's not about you. Let's step back and think, this isn't about the value that you bring. That's not what the money you're being paid the money for. The thing that the company that you're working for pays you money for is the skills that you deliver and the behavior you're exhibiting doing that. It's about the amount of time that you spend doing those skills and that behavior for them, and they pay you a certain amount for it. And so I think when we step back and see and get away from the personal and get into that kind of idea that it isn't about money. It isn't about money. It isn't about you and the value you bring. The value you bring is infinite. And I remember someone saying that to me, and I'm going, what? What do you mean? But actually, it's not about you as your soul and you as your whole of you. You never bring that whole of you into your work. That's not what they're paying you for. They're paying you for your skills, and they're paying you to do a particular job. So I really wanted to bring that up to start with, because I think that really makes a big kind of difference when we're talking about negotiation. Because when we take the personal away from it, it can feel a lot better. It's kind of like, well, okay, I'm negotiating how much money for these skills, and you can kind of distance yourself a little bit. Hi, Brooke, just sort of seen your comment as well. Great to have you on here. So yeah, thanks, and hope if you've got any questions, as I said, please do flash them as they come along, or any comments as well. If this is making sense, please let me know. So money, it can feel challenging, but it doesn't need to be as challenging as it is. So it's not personal. It's about valuing your skills. The other thing that comes into money is that it's about what the company can afford. It's about the value that they are placing on this particular role and what they need. So it doesn't always work out the way we want it to do. The other thing to say is that we may need to prove our value first. We may need to find a way of showing how much value that we bring, so that in order to get that recognition, in order for them to see, because the company's taking a risk in some ways. They're looking at, especially if this is going into a negotiation around them employing you, they're looking over what it is that you are saying that you're going to bring to the role, and they're taking a risk on the fact that you will deliver what they need. And so they may, if you're going into the role, kind of offer you we'll start at this and then we'll review it after 6 months and see where that takes us. Or they may just take a risk on you because you stand firm, and it's really, the money is important to you. But that's something that to take into consideration, is the fact that they are putting a value on it against what they can afford as a business and the risk that they're willing to take. So again, it's not about you. It's not personal. It's about what is it that's going on in the business. So one of the things that I think can often come up that's difficult about money is the fact that actually we start to look at what other people are paid, and this is something that can be quite difficult to find out because we don't talk about money that often. But when we start finding out that so and so is paid more than us, and look, they're doing the same job as me, or they deliver the same thing as me, it can feel really funny and quite like there's something wrong there. And there's kind of a couple of things that can come in that. Maybe they are doing the same job as you and they're being paid more. And so that's a good opportunity to go and have a conversation with your boss and just have that open, honest conversation and say, look, they're doing the same role. I think I'm delivering as much, or if not more than them, based on what I've seen. But always recognize that this is what you're seeing. You might be seeing an area of their role that they are doing, which you just, it isn't something you're aware of. They might be delivering more than you without you realizing it. They also may be someone who is being managed over their performance, and you will never know that. It may be that they are not performing as well as they should be, and that actually the company is trying to negotiate them down. And in a good company where it's all kind of nice and fair, this is what's happening. And I've been in that position where I've been the boss, where someone's come to me and said, yeah, I think I do as much as they do, and they're paid this much. I know they're on a higher grade than I, so I should be in that grade. And I can't say to that person, well, actually, they're under some sort of performance review at the moment because they're not performing at that grade. All I can do is just say, okay, that's fair enough, but we need to talk about you, and we need to talk about these things which we've said is what you need for that role. So it can be a very difficult conversation sometimes to do that. But I thought that it might be a useful perspective to bring to you, so you can think, well, when we have that conversation about money, let go of the personal side of things, let go of the fact that this is about your value, and start to kind of think about, okay, how do I see this in the context of the company and the skills that I bring? And then take the evidence of what I'm bringing to whoever it is, whether that's going into a new role or whether it's in the role that you're in at the time. The next thing I wanted to encourage you to think about in terms of what's your ideal is, what about time? How much time do you want to be spending working for this company? And how do you want that to come through? Are you happy to have kind of constrained work hours where it's kind of particular hours of the day, and particular industries you need that? I know Tony's a teacher, and of course there are kind of particular hours where you have to be at school teaching. But at the same time, do you want to have, if maybe you can negotiate to have some flexibility, maybe you can kind of find a way around that, and thinking about how much flexibility do you want is kind of important in when you're thinking about going into a role. And the other thing to think about in that flexibility, while flexibility sounds fantastic, I think in most of the roles I've done, I've had flexible working hours. And rather than it giving me less working time so that I could kind of I could kind of finish work a bit earlier, and I could kind of finish when I'd kind of done my job, what happened was that there was a creep, and my job role crept, and it became bigger. It became bigger based on the things that I was doing, and it became bigger based on the number of hours I was willing to put in. And so while there was flexibility, what it meant that I was doing lots of hours. And so the flexibility, the company got the benefit of that flexibility much more than I did. So if you are looking for flexibility in that role and in the hours that you work, finding a way to be strict with yourself to make sure that you follow them is probably the most important thing. And it sounds funny, you're kind of putting some constraints on your flexibility, but making sure you take advantage of that flexibility. I guess that's what I'm saying. What do you want from that flexibility, and why do you want it? And making sure you connect with that, because that will help you stay true to it. Thinking about flexible. So one of the things that I've seen happen more and more is that people are coming down to things like a 4-day week rather than doing a 5-day week. So how would you persuade if you want a 5-day week, how might you persuade someone that that's something you could drop down to? And here, and having been on both sides of this, so I joined my role at the University of York with the aim of going down to 4 days a week, and never quite managed to persuade anyone to make that happen. But at the same time, I've had people come to me and say, I'd really like this to be a 4-day-a-week role. And so the things that tend to feed into that is kind of just developing a confidence that that the job will still get done. What is the job that needs to be done within the company, and how do I make sure that that is still being done? So that's kind of the main thing that comes up. Sorry, I'm just checking the comments because Tony just said, I think it can be hard to balance time. I'm going to flash it up. I think it can be hard to balance time when you do enjoy your job, and sometimes it's about finding time to do what you want to do for yourself and not because you have to, if that makes sense. Yeah, it does, Tony. And I think, but it's also thinking about what else do you want to do with your time, because it's so easy for work to creep out when you enjoy it, especially. And if you enjoy it, that's fine. But if it's recognizing that that's coming from your place of enjoyment, not because the company is expecting you to do it, and they're not paying you to do that, you're getting the enjoyment from it rather than the money in some ways. So having that recognition can help you. And then, yeah, Brooke, need a lesson on being strict and working from home. Yeah, that can creep so much when we haven't got that time at the end of the day that kind of stops us from, that gets us back into kind of doing our stuff. And especially at the moment, I think with the pandemic and the lockdown, because we haven't got the social stuff to be going and doing, it's easier for it to drift in. And so the thing that helps me is we've got a dog. So the dog kind of comes and nudges me and says, come on, it's time for a walk. And that's a really great way to kind of go, right, it's the end of the day, let's switch off. but finding ways to kind of have those nudges, committing to other things that are for us, can really help. So let's go back to time. So I was started to talk about kind of reduced hours and 4-day week. So how would I go about negotiating a 4-day week? Well, the thing that I think really works is if you can demonstrate that you can do the role, or that you have an answer to what you're going to drop in that by not doing that extra day, what the company might be able to do with it. And that might not be obvious. That might be that you have to have a conversation with your boss. Again, it's almost like rather than thinking about it as a negotiation, I'm going to come to this, it's kind of saying, okay, I'd really like to do a 4-day week. What do you think about it? And that's a negotiation too, but it's just kind of opening up the conversation and saying, well, is this something you're open to? How could we make it work? How could we find a way? What would you need to see from me in order to make that happen? And so that's one way of approaching that. Something that I know someone I've been working with is particularly doing here is they've actually taken their holiday and spread their holiday out across a number of weeks, across several months. So they've decided that they're going to prove that they can do the job that they need to do in 4 days. And find a way to demonstrate that. And so that's the thing that they're taking within it. Certainly at the moment where companies are looking to cut back on salary that they pay, that could be something that you go with an option and saying, well, I'm willing to cut down to a 4-day week, and I think I could do this amount of the job in that period of time, and I don't think this is needed, or I think so, and such that this could be spread across other people. That's the sort of thing that you would want to be going in with. But again, it's going in and having the conversation rather than kind of going, right, I'm going in with the aim of coming out of this session with a 4-day week. It's having that discussion. The other thing that I just want to drop in, because I know Janice asked this in the build up to this in the questions, is what about part-time? What about if you want to go in with a part-time role or a job, or maybe it's a job share or whatever it is? How do you negotiate that? And I definitely think that this is something people have got less experience of, so it's a tougher one to talk about. And particularly if you're coming from the company's angle, the challenges that they would want to kind of, or have to figure out, is how is this role going to be done over 2 people? How do we recruit those 2 people? So that's going to cost them more to recruit 2 people, possibly if it is one job shared between 2 people. How do you recruit? And that's going to cost more. So can we do that? How do these people coordinate between each other? Is it just like the rest of the team, or do they need to have handovers and things like that? Is there some sort of collaboration that they need to do between each other? And how might it work? So if you can go in with an example of how you think it could work and how this could happen, then that's kind of really valuable and a really good opening position for that. But it's always bearing in mind the fact that it's not only going to cost the company probably more money to do this, but it will also cost them time. And that time can be very precious, especially if they're short of a person, they're recruiting a person, or they're wanting something done, they haven't got policies in place to do it. Then once you start opening this up, then they just haven't got that time. They haven't got the time to figure it out. But I would also say that, again, right now, all of this stuff around time, but given the lockdown that we're in and the change of work practice that we've got, this is the absolute perfect time to be starting to have these conversations, because it's the time when you can start to kind of experiment with things a little bit more. You are the one working from home, and they can't see you all the time. And if you are the one working from home, I'm conscious that Tony's here and she is doing some work from home, but teachers and various other jobs, I know that that's not all working from home. But if you are working from home, that could be a great chance to just experiment and see how well you do and what works for you, so that you can then take that to your boss or whoever it is and show them. Now, I know that this is kind of very much coming from you're doing the job already. If you're going into a new role and you're thinking about, well, what is it that I'm wanting here, and what is it that they're willing to ask me, then just think about what evidence you have of what you've done previously and how you worked previously, and find out from them how they work. So the other thing that I just wanted to kind of talk about is that I've talked about money and time. And the thing I haven't said, in the money side of things, was that money isn't necessarily just about salary. The money that they pay you might also be to do with the pension that's offered, the extra benefits that there are. There might be the bonus. So I know when I was working at the university, one of the big selling points was the fact that we could offer a very good pension and very good working hours. And so that often kind of offset the fact that we had a lot of restriction on the salary that we could offer and where we could start with. So, okay, so I'm just carrying on. The last thing that I wanted to do, talk about in terms of your ideal, is also thinking about the less tangible stuff. And I said that kind of in a work environment, we're talking about exchanging money for time and skills. But there's some other bits which do feed in, and that's the work environment. So thinking about what is the work environment that you would like to work in? What's important to you? What are the values that you want to see exhibited in the company? What's the culture what would you like the culture to be like? And what sort of lifestyle would you like to have? Do you want to be kind of in it and really full on and kind of really kind of getting into and going, or would you prefer it to be more relaxed? And that's a really good sort of set of things to think about before you go into, or when you go into any sort of negotiation, finding out about what's the work environment of this place. And if you're in the place, then you should have a decent awareness of the working environment. If you're going into a new place, then the clues that you want to be looking for is how does the interview work? How were the people in the interview? Were they looking stressed and pressured and overwhelmed? Were they respecting each other? Were they kind of open to listening to you? Did they seem collaborative? In any kind of conversations that you might have, and this is where that negotiation conversation is really actually could be the value in having it is that you find out what this person is like, and if that's your boss, you get a feel for what's it going to be like working with them. So that's kind of one way of, another way of finding out what it might be like to be working here. You may also get the chance to talk to potential colleagues and people that you might be working with, and asking to do that is really important. Whenever I've recruited for a role, I've always kind of given people the opportunity to have a tour with the person that they're in with someone from within the team, so they could ask them questions about, well, what's it really like to work here? What's important to this place? And all of those questions really come through. But just stepping back and thinking about that, and then thinking, how much do I trade? So a high salary for having a really kind of nice, collaborative, supportive, authentic working environment. And there's a decent amount that I personally, I did that. I moved from a company where it was very full on, and moved into the university where for a while it was just quite relaxed. And I was just like, wow, that's just a breath of fresh air. I just really enjoy being that. And of course, with my own kind of approach, I then made it more full on. But that was the way that I brought it through, and that's the way it kind of worked for me. So hopefully I've given you some things to think about. So we might go a little bit beyond half an hour on this, because I haven't actually even started talking about the actual negotiation. But I've given you some background to really think about what you're going in. So the next thing to think about, once you've got your ideal, is who is it that I want to negotiate with? Who is it that I am? Who is it that's kind of that is the best person to take part in this negotiation? So it might be the person that's the hiring, that has been running the interviews and who makes you an offer and all that sort of thing. But that person might not be your boss, and they may also not have the control to be, or the influence to be able to negotiate on some of these things. So it might be that you have a discussion with this hiring person, and they then push you on to speak to your new boss or HR or anything like that. Different people can appear in this process. And while that can be a bit of a pain, what it does do is it gives you the chance to kind of go around these different people and understand what it is that is important. If you're in, and what's important to them and what the culture is. And if you're already in the role, actually having, and you would tend to go and speak to your boss, it might be that having a conversation with HR actually opens up a lot more information, and finding out, well, how's it done across the rest of the company? Is there something is there something that I'm missing? There's nothing wrong with kind of, HR can be seen as this kind of difficult, they only come in when something challenging is happening, or they run the training side of things, but actually they can be really useful people to have a decent kind of career oriented conversation, who allow you to step back and see, well, this is what it's like across the whole of the company, this is what company policy is. So HR can be really useful there as well. The benefits of having a chat with the person that's going to be your boss is that you get a feel for how they might be as a manager. You can talk about career progression and how, and I didn't really say that in terms of the other elements, but career progression, opportunity for training, that can come in there as well. If you want to grow and develop, what opportunities are there going to be, and what's your boss's approach to that? How often will they get together with you and review that? So those are all kind of things to think about, and to, especially when you're going into a negotiation, going back to that question of who am I negotiating with, just being conscious of the fact that they may not have as much influence over the things that you're asking for than you'd like them to have. And so that takes me into the negotiation itself. And really, I've said this already, but I like to think of it as a conversation rather than negotiation. And the model that I fall back on in any kind of thing around these lines is the Stephen Covey model about win-win. So the idea that when you're going into this conversation, when you're going into a negotiation, what you're looking for is win-win. So both sides come out with a benefit, both sides coming out getting what they want. And often that comes through finding, both people have their ideal, both sides have their ideal, but then there's kind of like a way of merging that ideal and a new way of doing things that comes through that as a result of it. So it might not fit either ideal, but it's not quite a compromise, because a compromise suggests that someone is letting go of something that's important to them. So it's about finding the win-win way of working. And that only ever comes through conversation. It only ever comes through listening and understanding each other. So that's really important in this. The thing to say is that the Stephen Covey idea is that you never want to end up with the win-lose or lose-win, whichever way around that is. But so you never want to end up with someone winning and someone losing, because if someone is losing, then they will feel resentful around it, and it won't, that kind of relationship just won't work very well. So the idea is that you're either going for win-win or you're going for a no deal. And the no deal is kind of being willing to walk away and say, well, if I don't have this, if this doesn't sit right for me, then I am going to walk away from this. And I'm going to find, if you're negotiating over a role you're going into, okay, it's saying this job's not for me, I'm going to walk away. If you're in a role already, then it might be saying, in which case, this isn't going anywhere within this company, so I need to start looking for a new role. I need to start looking for something that fits my ideal, rather than feeling trapped and feeling like I'm losing out here. So that's the kind of the mindset that you want to be going in with, is that you're looking for win-win. But if you explore it and you're willing to listen to what the company wants and what the company needs from you and what they're willing to do, and they're willing to listen to you, then you should be able to find something that says, actually, this is what we can do to make it work, or let's agree that we can't make it work. And that no deal isn't a kind of stomping your feet, well, no deal. It's kind of saying, well, actually, we just can't find a way. So hopefully that idea gives you something to think about. And really, it's about having that conversation from a grounded place, a place where you're not taking it personally, where you know what it is that you want, what your ideal is, but you're willing to listen and you're willing to explore. Now, one of the things that came to me when I was thinking about this is kind of going, well, what about all those people who are kind of in companies where actually the company isn't very good at this? They just kind of demand what they want, and they want to get the most out of you and kind of push to get how should you kind of negotiate in those sorts of situations where they're just taking and taking and taking? And if that's clearly a win-lose position, the company's on the winning side and you feel like you're on the lose. Well, the thing that came to me was that everyone that's watching this is in the Authentic Tech Leaders group. And so that suggests to me that authenticity is important to you. And so that's telling me immediately, or what the assumption I'm making is that if you'll feel that authenticity is showing up authentically is important to you, then you need to do that in your negotiations. You need to do that in your conversations, and you need to be willing to have that. And you also need to be in an environment where that's okay. And if that's not okay, then that to me sounds like a no deal. It sounds to me like it's time for you to start thinking about moving on. And that move on doesn't need to be fast. It can be just a little nudge to say, do you know what? It's time to start looking. It took me a year to move my major job role. But it was just that niggle in the back that was kind of going, this isn't the right place for you right now. And eventually things fell into place and I made that move. So really, that's kind of, it's having the conversation, being authentic, having an authentic, open, honest conversation. I've heard some of the standard kind of things about the ideas about if you're going into negotiation, you need to start high. So then when they negotiate you down, you get to the point where you want to be. Personally, I wouldn't do that because I want to be authentic. I want to go in and say, look, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm looking for. And they might negotiate you down by offering you other stuff. They might say, well, actually, we can't do that. They might just there's all sorts of mights that would happen. And the thing to tune into is, well, what's going on for you? Are you willing to take it? Is this something you are willing to compromise on, or is it something that you're going to walk away from? And so for me, going in and kind of with an overly inflated price is not going into a conversation authentically. And I know, particularly, so my husband does quite a lot of negotiations around this, and he'll always offer what he thinks that is the right value in his things. And I've had so many conversations with him about other people who kind of always go in lower in order to raise them up, or higher to go down. And it's just such a confusing thing. If you can just turn up and go, no, actually, I'm not going in higher here. This is the thing. This is the salary that I'm looking for. This is the time that I'm looking for to committing. And I want to have a conversation with you about it. Then what you should do is open that person up to having that conversation instead, and just standing firm and staying calm, staying grounded, and staying connected. So, Tony, I'm going to come back to your question in a minute, because I'm going to and a couple of comments in a minute, but I'm just going to finish off this last little bit, and then we'll come to the questions. So okay, the last couple of things that I wanted to just say is, one of the things that I think is really important to acknowledge in any negotiation conversation is to think about it from their perspective as well, and know that they may not enjoy negotiating over this either. And particularly for someone who is offering you a job, putting you out there a job offer, and they've got a salary in mind that's been negotiated within the company, and they've kind of got agreement that this is what they can offer, probably with a bandwidth somewhere, but they're the ones kind of bringing this, and they might not like that either. And I've been there. When I make that offer, when I'm kind of on the end of the phone calling someone up, my heart's in my throat too. I don't know why. I mean, it's just that whole idea that I want this person to work for me. I really want this person to work for me. And I really hope that they will take what I offer. And so it's not always about them. It might feel like they're in the kind of position of power, but if they want you, then you're in a position of power too. And that's why I talk about having a conversation and being open about what it is that you want. They may or may not have control of the resources. I've said that, but they may have on salary, as an example, they may have a bandwidth that they can kind of go up and down on based on what you ask for. things like kind of time and working time policy, that's probably going to come into HR. So they may need to go away from whatever conversation you have with them to say, and say, look, I can't agree to that right now. Let me go away and negotiate it within the company. Let me go away and have a conversation with other people within the company and see what we can do. And if that's the case, then you might have to wait for a while. It may take them a while to kind of make the working parts within the organization come together to do that. And I mean, there's a particular example where I know I think it took 6 months to recruit someone in the end, based on all the negotiations that were going backwards and forwards. Now, this was a kind of fairly highly salaried professor in a university where you had to wade your way through all sorts of university things and policies and figure out all sorts of crap. But it took 6 months. That's just amazing. I couldn't believe it when we look back at how long it had taken. But it's just understanding that it can take some time. So if they disappear and with something that you've asked for and aren't getting back to you, then it might just be that they're working their way around the organization trying to figure it out. And that's the same within the role. If you're in the role as well, if you go and ask for something and your boss doesn't have control over that, it might be that they need to go and talk to lots of different people to see if it can happen. And the thing within this, how do you know? Well, you know when you talk to someone authentically, you know whether they're kind of brushing you off or whether they're actually kind of going away and doing something. And if you ask them for updates, they should be willing to give you an update on what they're doing. So that's kind of all I had to say, and I hope that's kind of given you a bit of a different perspective on negotiation, but also made you think as well about the different elements that might go into a negotiation. And I would definitely come back to kind of thinking about that win-win, going for win-win, having a conversation, finding out how you can work together to find what you both need. Going into a negotiation with that in mind will always result in kind of coming out with something that works for you, whether it's coming out with something that you're working together or you walking away, but walking away in a way that is respectful. So, Tony, I was going to come back to your question, how to promote yourself without being taken advantage of. So I'm not quite sure what you mean by the taken advantage of, but what I kind of, and if you want to put some more in there, then tell me a bit more about what you mean by that. But if I take what I would think about how to promote yourself, how to promote yourself authentically, it's not being ashamed to say, this is what I've done. And so if you're working at a particular level, or you're being asked to work at a particular level, and you feel, and maybe this is what you mean, you feel that you're going above and beyond, you want to get that promotion, and you want to kind of to be recognized as doing more than your role, and there's a promotion or a salary or a pay rise opportunity available there, then you often need to demonstrate that you're working at a different level before they will make any sort of change within that. So one of the things you can do is kind of start working at that level and start having the conversation with people about the fact that that's what you're doing, and starting. It's not necessarily about putting it out there and kind of bragging about it, but it's having regular one-to-ones with your boss and saying, look, do you realize I'm doing this, which I think is on top of my job role? Now, the thing that I would also probably be doing is even at the very start of that, making sure I had a conversation with my boss. Yeah, so right, okay, I'm just going to put this up here. So what you mean is you want to move to a higher level, so you need to showcase, but you don't want to do it for nothing. And I completely get that. And the thing that I would be doing is having a conversation as early as possible with your boss, with whoever is kind of going to be making that assessment of whether you can move to a higher level, and finding out from them, what is it that they need you to do? What are the things that they need to see in order for you to get there? And trying to get a full picture of all of those things if you can, so that you don't waste your effort demonstrating a load of stuff that actually then they don't even notice, they don't feel is the thing that you need to do. Now, I know that sometimes it's just not clear, so sometimes they don't know what they're looking for. And so this is where it can be beneficial to kind of go away and do some stuff and then go to them saying, right, I've done this. What tell me more. Does this work? Does this help? What else do I need to do? And so having that ongoing conversation, if they know that you're wanting to move up, then You've got to talk to them about it, and you've got to find out what are their categories, what are they assessing you against in order to be promoted. And just to tell me if that helps, and I'm sure we could have a separate conversation about this at some point, but I think it is really getting clarity around what do they need to see in order to be promoted. And so that's the thing that I would be pushing for. And if that clarity isn't there, and this is the bit where we come back to the win-lose, the no deal side of things. If you can't, is that a no deal for you? If you don't ever move to a higher level, would you be happy staying where you are? If they haven't got clarity on how you do that, and you do extra work and they don't recognize that, would you be able to cope with that? And if you can't, then the answer is to start looking around and seeing, well, what else could I do? Who else would recognize me? Are there other roles that I could take on where I could be moving up to a higher level elsewhere? And that's, for me, is the no deal side of things. So hopefully that makes some sense. I don't know if there's any other questions. Just quickly scan through the comments. Can't see any more. Thank you very much for all your comments as you come through. Tony especially, thank you very much. It's great to see what's coming through as you've been listening to this. Really helps me, give me some idea of what's going down and how it's going down. So I really hope this has been useful. If you have any questions, like I say, if you're watching this on catch up, then please do ask any questions there. I will be checking back in to see if they come through. Yeah, hopefully this has been useful, and I will see you soon. See you later.